Hello, welcome back to my rambling thoughts on the Harry Potter film series with me, Johnny. If you've made it this far, if you've watched, if you're on to watching a third of these, good on you. Thanks very much. What did I do? Finger guns. Yeah, so I didn't make a video yesterday like I normally do. Problems with broadband in my area. Nothing I could do about it unless I was going to... chair was squeaking. Unless I was going to try and upload a video over 3G. No, that's just not happening. But yes, I did watch Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban last week. And it is the first of the Harry Potter films not directed by Chris Columbus. It is directed by Alfonso Cuarón, or Cuarón. I said that really bad. Sorry to anybody who knows how to pronounce that, from Spain or Latin America. My apologies, I've severely offended you. Anyway, my first initial impression is that the tone of this film is really, really different. The way it's shot is very different. The lighting, even the lighting is different in a lot of scenes. It's a lot less dark. In terms of the way it looks, there's not a lot of filtering going on. There's a lot more on location shoots. It seems like the director, Alfonso Cuarón, there I go again. he seemed to have pulled out a bit more naturalistic performances in certain points from the actors, particularly when all the Gryffindor boys in the dormitory are like, you know, messing around with so there's some kind of sweets or something like that make you sound like certain animals, whatever. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of them. There was a lot of kind of naturalistic acting going on, which, you know, is okay. It pulls me out of the film a little bit. I don't really like naturalistic performances like that. You see that in detective dramas on TV, and you can't tell what they're saying because they're talking at a normal conversational register, not on an acting register. So it just sounds bizarre. It's personal preference. I don't really like it. But we're moving a little bit ahead of ourselves. We'll start with things I did like about this film. David Thewlis as Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin is my favourite character in all of Harry Potter. He is someone I relate to on a personal level, and not because I'm a werewolf or anything. We'll just leave that there. But I do relate to him. I find myself relating to him. Ron as well. I find myself relating to Ron quite a lot, particularly my teenage self. But David Thewlis, I think, hits all the beats of Lupin. He hits the mannerisms. He hits the personality. He hits it all. He hits it all brilliantly, and he nails it. He just nails that performance. He's pretty much exactly the way I imagined Lupin in the book. Now, this is obviously the first film with Sirius Black. Gary Oldman plays Sirius Black. Gary Oldman is one of the great actors. He's just phenomenal in pretty much everything, a bit like Alan Rickman. This is it's a funny thing because Gary Oldman's performance as Sirius Black, his interpretation of the character was very different from how I imagined Sirius Black in the books. I imagined Sirius Black less manic, quieter, it's a bit more brooding and moody than manic, and sort of all over the place and a bit crazy. Or at least his madness was more just sort of in his eyes rather than in his sort of general mannerisms. Having said that, Gary Oldman's performance is so good, I didn't care. I didn't care that it was different from how I imagined it. Everyone has different interpretations of characters anyway, so... I mean, physically, I imagine Sirius Black as being bigger. quite a lot bigger than Gary Oldman, but that's another thing I didn't really mind because it's Gary freaking Oldman. Emma Thompson as Professor Trelawney, again, a slightly different interpretation of a character. It's quite faithful to the books actually, but yeah, it just seemed. I mean, it's maybe just because I knew it was Emma Thompson. It was kind of like, oh, that's Emma Thompson. So I think it would have been an actor I didn't know to giving that performance. It might have not taken me out of it so much. But she does a really quite a good job. What you don't get is the one of the things I didn't like was that they left out. Well, they had Hermione, disparaging it, but what the divination, but what they didn't have was Ron making fun of it. He was more just kind of actually trying to see something, which I don't know. Ron's a bit more of a sarcastic character than I think he is in these films, and so yeah, that was maybe something I didn't quite like. I loved one of the scene in the Shrieking Shack, and pretty much most of the film after the Shrieking Shack, apart from the ending, the very end. But that scene in the Shrieking Shack where you have David Thewlis, Alan Rickman, and Gary Oldman all acting together, and they just there's a huge amount of chemistry and electricity in that scene, which I really really liked. There were changes from the book. For instance, in the book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione all jinx Snape together. Whereas in the movie, Harry does it on his own. Which is, maybe I think in the movies just trying to make Ron out to be more of Harry out to be more of a hero. Which I don't know, maybe takes a little bit of the nuance away from his relationship with Ron and Hermione. Maybe they'll rectify that in later films, maybe not. You're probably watching this with a smile on your face. My predictions. But anyway, so yeah, I loved that scene. I really liked just pretty much all that up until the point after they free Sirius, and then the firebolt turns up, and then the movie just sort of ends with Harry flying off on a freeze frame, which I was like, if I remember correctly, that's not how the book ends. Which I again, a little bit jarring, honestly. And in the book also, that's different. Sirius sends him a firebolt before the end. But anyway, again, Alan Rickman as Severus Snape, fantastic again. One of the things I really appreciate about his performance is the fact that he's able to hit that really fine sweet spot of being evil but not entirely evil. So maybe it's just because I know what's going to happen at the end that, I'm not convinced he's that evil. But he seems to be able to inject enough humanity into Severus to make him not seem just bitter all the time. So yeah, it's a nuance in Alan Rickman's performance. I've already gushed enough about Alan Rickman in the first two videos, but that's a nuance of his performance I really, really appreciate. Sort of middling stuff, maybe, that I didn't quite, not that I didn't like it or that I liked it, it just, meh stuff, we'll say it's meh stuff. Michael Gambon, this may be controversial, I don't know. Michael Gambon as Dumbledore, at least in this film, again, maybe I'm being a bit hypocritical because it's maybe just not how I imagine Dumbledore in the books. In this film, I know there's a bit of a personality malfunction in the next film. I know about that. Harry putting his name in the Goblet of Fire. I'll be watching that tonight, so you'll hear all about that. It's my favourite book, so if I don't like the next film, the next video is going to be angry. So yeah, I find his performance as Dumbledore, Michael Gambon's performance, a little bit zany. He sort of plays up the kind of playfulness and sort of slight zaniness of Dumbledore a bit too much, at the expense of like his calmness. Whereas I find your man Harris, whose first name again I can't remember, he was Marcus Aurelius in Gladiator. I find his performance, at least in the second film, much closer to what I imagine Dumbledore actually was, which is kind of a very softly spoken, maybe slightly odd, but not so zany character. Michael Gambon seems to make him a little bit cuckoo, which is not something I really... My impression of Dumbledore from the books was not like that. And again, it's probably hypocritical of me considering Gary Oldman as Sirius Black. His interpretation is different of the character than mine, and therefore, but it didn't get in the way. But for some reason with Michael Gambon it did. Maybe it's just what he chose to emphasize about Dumbledore just got to me a wee bit. So yeah, I mean, he wasn't bad as Dumbledore. He just wasn't quite what I thought he should be. Another thing, again, Peeves isn't in this film. I'm going to complain about that about every film. Peeves isn't in it. It's stupid. He should be in it. I was told that Rick Mayall filmed scenes as Peeves, but was then cut from the film, which I think that makes me angry, because Rick Mayall is a legend. And to not have him as Peeves is the biggest missed opportunity of these films, I think. I think it's ridiculous that he wasn't in it. Anyway, yeah, I wasn't a fan. One of the things I think they left out, which I didn't like, was that I was waiting for Lupin to explain to Harry that he and James and Sirius and Peter Pettigrew were the names on the Marauders map: Padfoot, Prongs, Wormtail. He didn't do it. Like, they cut that out completely. I thought that was such a moment that could have tied everything together, that could have brought Remus and Harry closer together, Sirius and Harry closer together, linked them to James. They didn't. It could have just been like 30 seconds of dialogue that would have really tied them together as friends, which is kind of central to the whole to a lot of the story in Harry Potter, is their friendship. And their relationship with Severus. And so I that annoyed me that they left that out. Which is funny, I'm getting more annoyed about things I didn't like in this film than the first two, but I actually like this film better, just in general, which is bizarre. But anyway, what else did Draco Malfoy. There we go. Draco Malfoy isn't one of my favourite characters from the book, but I thought in this film he's one character who's a little bit wasted in this film. Not as drunk, but the potential of his character is a little bit wasted. They don't turn up. They don't dress up as him and Crabbe and Goyle do not dress up as Dementors. Actually, funny enough, if we can go back to stuff that I liked, the Dementors in this film are pretty good. They are just a pretty good representation of Dementors from the book. Again, some funky sort of CGI stretching of people's faces, which is fine. But yeah, I didn't mind them at all. I thought they were fairly faithful. I'm sure there's probably some glaring thing that I'm totally missing about them that someone's gonna point out, but anyway, whatever. I can't remember right now. So yeah, I thought Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle were a little bit wasted. They don't seem to really be as mean or as they are in the books. They don't torment Harry as much. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't really like them very much in this film. I mean, Tom Felton's hair in this film is really weird. Like, the hair in this film in general is bizarre. Like, Ron has a mullet. Like, it's so weird. It's I guess 2003. I guess this 2004 this film came out. So yeah, I mean, if Ewan McGregor can have a mullet in Attack of the Clones, I mean, I suppose. It was just everywhere. So yeah, I didn't really like that very much. I didn't like them leaving out the story about the Marauders map. I didn't like the ending. I've mentioned that already in this, but I didn't like the ending. I didn't like Harry flying away in the firebolt and it being a freeze frame. It just seemed a bit bizarre. It's just like, where's the denouement with Dumbledore? As far as I remember in the book, there's the traditional meeting between Harry and Dumbledore in Dumbledore's office. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But still, I thought that it was just a bit of a weird place to end the film. Yeah, so I and just like a freeze frame on Harry's face. It's just a bit cheesy. Yeah, so I didn't really appreciate that very much. The use of CGI in the film is actually not too bad in this one. Actually, generally speaking, I've been pleasantly surprised by the use of CGI in these films. They haven't been super offensive in terms of being just so old that they're crap. But they're but yeah, it was actually not bad for its period. But again, I didn't like the score very much. I hope it's different in Goblet of Fire, because the score was just weird. I thought a pure sweeping romantic John Williams score just suits it so much better than a kind of weird, medieval chamber music stuff, which is that what you call it, chamber music? I don't know, whatever you call it. Just was a bit weird. I found the change in the way it's shot. So I mentioned at the beginning that the way it's shot and the way it's lit is very different from the other ones. I found the way it's lit in this film, I didn't really like it very much. It was a bit jarring. It kind of takes you out of the unreality of it. So you have the scene with Buckbeak, which again is another thing they changed. There's only one hippogriff in this film, where there's like 7, I think, in the book. They're clearly outside on location, but it's like in the middle of the day and the sun's splitting the trees, which is fine because it's supposed to be September, whatever. But it was shot in such a way that it wasn't like filtered. It didn't seem to be filtered. And so the sort of unreality of it, the sort of magicalness of it seemed to be taken away. You're kind of like, oh, these are actors in costumes in a random forest somewhere in England or Scotland or wherever it happened to be. It's a bit like in the Hobbit films when you're like, oh, that's a set and you can see that's a matte painting in the background, because the way it's lit is far too real. There isn't filtering. They haven't put like a green or blue filter on it to make it look kind of magical. you look at films of this era, and one of the things that was really popular was that kind of coloured filtering of shots. So the Matrix, for example, when they're in the Matrix, everything's slightly green. Gladiator did this really, really strongly, and it really works. But actually the master stroke of this particular this kind of cinematography, I guess, is Fellowship of the Ring, because they really carefully went through like every frame in this film and color graded it and filtered it to the nth degree. That's one of the hallmarks of why Fellowship of the Ring is so good, is that the survival of their series depended on that film being a masterpiece, and it was. But yeah, that's something that's lacking from this film. It's something I like about films of the early 2000s. Probably some people don't, but I do. I appreciate it. It makes me feel like this is an unreal fantasy magic world, which I really like. I thought this movie kind of played up the real world a little bit too much. But yeah. So yeah, generally speaking, I like this film better than the first two. The first two I gave like 6.5 and 3 stars out of 5. So we'll say this film is, I mean, now that I think about it, 7 just seems too high. I'm kind of regretting that I gave the first two 6.5s. But yeah, just for the sake, I guess the scoring system is self-contained within the Harry Potter book. Let's just put it that way, not compared to other films in general. Just within the Harry Potter canon. So we'll give it a 7. And we'll give it like a 3.5 stars out of 5. That kind of works. 1 star is equal probably about 2 points in my system. So yeah, I liked it better than the first two, although I probably have more complaints, specific complaints about it, which is odd, but I'm going by my general impression and my general enjoyment of the film. So yeah, I am going to watch The Goblet of Fire, probably after dinner, and then hopefully, if Farmer doesn't put a plough through the broadband line again, which I'm assuming that's what happened, either that or a neighbour's dog chewed through it, or there was a light shower within 10 miles or something, BT. I'll make a video about The Goblet of Fire, which again, my favourite book, so yeah, it's gonna be interesting next week. See ya.